Get ready before life happens. The podcast helping you navigate life's what ifs.
Welcome to Before Life Happens, helping you navigate life's biggest what ifs and exploring how we can use money for good. I'm your host, Tony Stewart. Today, I'm joined by Brendan Frazier. Brendan, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Tony. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to being here. I am here and I'm looking forward to it. So thanks for having me.
Well, I'm looking forward to you staying on for the whole recording. So that'll be exciting.
Yeah.
I haven't had a guest bail yet in the middle of a podcast, but you never know. So
yeah, but have you had one stumble right out of the gate with the very first thing that they say? I mean, that might, we'll see. That'll set the stage for good recovery, hopefully.
You know, the strangest thing, because you have a podcast too, is sometimes when you ask a guest a question and it's like a yes, no answer, like talking to your teenager, how was your day at school? Fine. What'd you do? Nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. We won't do any yes, no answers today. How about that?
All righty. Sounds good. So let's jump in for our audience. You know, tell us a little bit about yourself. What is your origin story and how did you come to focus on the human side of money?
Yeah. So as it stands today, if we look at today and then work backwards to get back to this point, currently I'm the chief behavioral officer at RFG Advisory. So two questions is what is that? Well, we're an RIA platform. We help advisors build their businesses. But most people go, that's interesting, but what is it? What did you just say? Did you say chief behavioral officer? I've never heard of that before, which is totally fair. I mean, even my friends to this day are still kind of like, yeah, I don't really know what he does. He has this weird title, but basically we're pioneering a role for the entire industry. So we firmly believe, and think that there's research to back it up as well, but we firmly believe that the future of advice sits at the intersection of the technical side, but also the human side. And so to be able to do that, you can't just wake up and roll out of bed. Some people can wake up and roll out of bed and do the human side naturally and do it well. Most of us can't. Most of us need to know, hey, what are the systems? What are the skills? What are the processes? What are the tools that I can use to deliver a better client experience by focusing not just on their numbers, but on the person as well. So that's what I'm doing now. But this whole thing started back when it was around 2017, 2018. I was an advisor, financial advisor at the time. Well, actually, it started a little bit before that. So prior to that, I consulted with advisors. And I would hear all the time, Brendan, sometimes I feel like more of a therapist than I do a financial advisor. I think I'd be better off with a degree in psychology than I would a degree in economics or accounting or finance or whatever it is that I ended up getting my numbers-based degree in. And I remember hearing that and hearing it over and over again and thinking, yeah, that makes sense. That's not too shocking. That's not surprising. So I would just start asking the question of, if that's the case, what do you do about that, right? Like, if we all acknowledge this is a thing and we're getting trained in the technical side, what do we do about the fact that you're sometimes a therapist and not an advisor? And the most common response, probably 90+% of the time, was I read a book, did I tried a few things here and there. I remember thinking, like, that's probably not good enough. Not bad, better than nothing's probably not good enough. So then I become an advisor, start running my advisory business, and probably not shockingly, I'm sitting there working with clients. I'm thinking to myself, man, I feel like more of a therapist than I do an advisor. I feel like I'd be better off with a degree in psychology than I would a degree. Well, I didn't even get a numbers-based degree, but I thought to myself, I need a degree in psychology to deal with this part of the equation that nobody really taught us or trained us on. And so at that point, I start thinking, okay, we know this is important. We need to figure out how to bring this into our day-to-day lives and day-to-day practice and work that we do with clients. So, I mean, there are a lot of the answers on how to do this, a lot of the insights, a lot of the ways on how to do the quote-unquote human side, they exist. It's not like people haven't figured out how to build trust and connection, how to have better conversations, how to uncover what's truly important in people's lives, how to help them change their behavior and actually implement their recommendations. It's not like the answers don't exist. They just didn't exist within the field of financial services and financial advice. You had to go look in fields like neuroscience and psychology and therapy and communication and hostage negotiation, and they all exist. But so my goal at that point became, okay, I'm going to go find the answers and bring them back And hopefully I can use, if nothing else, I'll use it for my business, my practice, and my client relationships and be better off. But the primary method through which I was seeking that information and that learning was through a podcast. So I basically just started interviewing advisors, but also experts in behavior and psychology and communication and how it relates to money. And I just thought, hey, I'm going to learn a lot. Worst case scenario, I'll use it with my help. It'll help me be better off. Best case scenario, maybe there's some other people out there that are also interested in this. And so fast forward about a year, like I'm trying to think, it was about episode 18 or 19 was the turning point when I started like getting feedback directly from people around the world. When I started looking at the numbers and it was like, oh, this might be actually a sustainable thing. And I realized, wait a minute, there is an appetite and a demand for this out there. We just need to know how to use it practically, daily, day in and day out. And so the podcast led to speaking, led to training opportunities. I said not just the podcast. There's other content too. But it led to these opportunities. And then one day I woke up and thought, I'm having way more fun doing this than I am working with clients on retirement plans. So sold that business and then went full into helping advisors with the human side on my own. And then next thing you know, RFG calls and says, hey, we think this is where the industry's headed. We want to bring you on to help lead us, to help lead the charge and go that route. So that's the kind of, even really the abridged version of the origin story, but that's the path from how I got to this point today.
Yeah, well, I completely agree. But first, I want to point out that you're the first person on the show to mention hostage negotiation. So I don't have a prize for that, but that is awesome. Now we've mentioned hostage negotiations. So advisors can be prepared for that scenario.
Yeah.
But, like we were talking pre-show, this is definitely, I agree with you that this is the future of the business. So, perhaps we should talk about that is, why do you feel that this really is the future of the business?
Well, I mean, it's a variety of reasons. It's the future of the business because it feels like there's this movement underway where there's finally this wide acceptance around the fact that technical knowledge isn't enough, that we need to also embrace not just the portfolio, but the person, and not just their numbers, but the human being as well. Now, we say it's the future. Why is it not the present? Why is it not the reality today? I mean, I have no idea. I've never met anybody who said, you know what, Brendan, I've been in this business for 40 years and it's just strictly about numbers and spreadsheets and calculations. Right? Like, anybody that's dealt with a human being and their money at some point, I mean, for probably longer than a week, has gone, oh, yeah, there is this human element to it. We all know it. We all acknowledge it. Why is it that we're sitting here in 2025, 26, whenever this eventually comes out, and it still feels like we're on the precipice or it's still a future? I have no idea. No clue. I guess we may not be able to answer that, but I will say that it does feel like there's this slight shift, this slight movement that's underway, making it more of a focus in the future. So why has it not happened now? Who knows? But let's just be thankful that it feels like it's happening to a certain degree at this point. And I really think that's being nudged, that's being forced mainly just because of the advancement and the proliferation of technology and what technology can do, but maybe more importantly, what it's going to be able to do in the future, when it's likely that it'll be able to do the technical stuff that advisors do faster, cheaper, and more reliably. And I think when you sit there long enough and you look at it and you think about it, you go, okay, wait, hang on. If it's going to be able to do that, where is my value going to come from? And then you go, okay, well, one of the things that one of the advantages we have over computer and over technology, and probably will have for a long time, hopefully forever, but we never know, is this human element that I bring. Right. So, and then there's studies out there that show like what clients want from a human advisor versus a digital advisor. And it's all the stuff you'd think. It's like, hey, we're cool that a digital advisor running portfolio reports, doing asset allocation, but we still want the human advisor because we want somebody that has empathy and listens to us, that understands our goals, our needs, our challenges, and our frustrations, that we like fully believe in to help guide us through decision making. So to answer the question, I don't know. There is this movement, and I think it's mostly being spawned by I'm going to call it the threat of technology is what sort of I think create some urgency. But ultimately, I just think it's the advancement and the proliferation of technology.
Definitely. One of the things that I'm seeing is the growth of financial therapists, financial coaches, and some of that is growing. A lot of CFPs that I know are recently have become, I think, certified financial therapists. It's hard to keep track of all the designations or something similar, or they've become members of the FCPE, as financial coaches. I mean, how are you seeing that as an impact? Is that going to be a trend that advisors are going down that route more than just being a CFP?
I think you're going to see more and more people. The numbers for those programs, so let's call it the financial therapy program on one hand, or the financial coaching program on the other hand, or even like any of these, we'll say designations or trainings that have a human element to them. I think you're probably going to see somewhat of an uptick across the board, like the high tide raises all ships, kind of thing. I think you're going to see the numbers increase across the board as there becomes more and more of a focus on the human side. That being said, I don't think I've met, to this point, I haven't met many advisors. They're out there, but the majority of advisors don't want to be financial therapists. They don't necessarily want to be financial coaches. They're like, hey, I want to be financial planners and business owners who have an adequate, or maybe even better than adequate, they can develop and train an elite skill set on the human side, but I can still be a financial planner. I don't want to be a full blown financial therapist, but I recognize that there are skills and processes and tools and things that I can learn and hone to get better at dealing with human beings and their money without having to be a certified financial therapist or an all-out financial coach, right? And maybe I'm wrong, that maybe that continues to evolve to where maybe our value shifts all the way in that direction, anecdotally, but also you look at the numbers at this point. The vast majority of advisors say, "Hey, I want to embrace the human side, but I don't want to go all the way into being a certified financial therapist." Not that they should or shouldn't, right? I'm not saying there's a reason to do it or a reason not to do it. It's just sort of the reality of the situation that we're in at this point.
Yeah, I would agree. Is that many advisors, like the numbers component because they're numbers based people. That's how they grew up in the business and they went to school. I think, as you mentioned, that as you've dealt with clients is that there's a human element, and that I think pretty much every successful advisor I've met over my career has been able to deal with people, and whether or not they think of themselves as a financial therapist, you listen to your clients, you have to process what they're telling you have to be able to give them a reasonable response. And so, even though maybe they're not financial therapists in name, I think that many of the most successful financial planners are therapists, I guess, in everything but name.
Yeah, yeah. I think the way that I think if we had somebody on here that was a certified financial therapist, I think what they would look at and say is those advisors recognize the need and want to develop the communication skills that a therapist has. But a certified financial therapist would say, yes, but we go through a ton of like learning and training on modalities and things that therapists do, like better understanding somebody's family history impacts their current money making decisions and the different dynamics that go into families that create their reality today. And so I think there's skills that come from therapy, but then there's also like treatment that comes from therapy. So most financial advisors are financial therapists, or should be or could be from the skill standpoint, but they're not sitting there going like, hey, I want to learn treatment methods to help this person overcome the shame that they're feeling when they spend money on something that they don't feel like is worth it, right? And if you do, I guess that's sort of the delineation, which is like, hey, if that is something that you want to do, that is a value that you want to provide and a conversation you want to have, a service that you want to deliver, then you go, all right, well, if that's the case, then I'm going to become a certified financial therapist so that I can be better equipped to have those conversations.
Yeah, that is really an interesting point, because there is a point where you become a therapist and you have all the therapist skills. And I guess maybe what I was saying earlier is that, is that we're communicators and things of that nature. I was a analyst working predominantly with financial planners. I did some litigation consulting, but at the end of the day, I still had to be able to communicate and
Yeah.
be able to relate to people. I wasn't going to, have, I don't want to say influence, that's not the right word, but, I wouldn't be able to understand what was being asked of me, or I wouldn't be able to explain the concepts, because some of what I did was technical and advanced. And I think that at the end of the day, you have to be able to communicate as a person. And so, yeah, that
Yeah.
didn't make me
Yeah.
a therapist by any means, but I also had to be a listener. So maybe it's listening is an important skill.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think communication skills are also just life skills, right? That translate well into almost any job or profession. I mean, certainly some need them more than others, right? Like the financial advisor that's dealing with a human being on an emotional topic like money needs a skill set around communication and listening and empathy and questions and using analogies and all that. They need that more so than a data engineer or a coder that sits at a computer screen and types in, writes out code all day. But that when that person leaves or when they're talking to their boss, right? Like they still need good communication skills, right? Communication skills are they're not required, right? But anybody can benefit. Anybody can benefit from them.
Definitely. And, the most successful financial planners I've seen, and I may have said this earlier in the show, are those who are able to communicate and have the relationships with their clients. They're always the good communicators. They used to be called the rainmakers back in the day. I don't know if anybody's still using that term, but
Yeah.
the ones who brought in the business.
Yeah, and they're the
So
ones that typically speak. You're exactly right. And they're the ones that typically speaking are just naturally good at it. Some people are naturally gifted in that way. And they just wake up, they roll out of bed, doesn't matter what the day looks like, they don't even need their coffee, and they just connect with people on a different level. They communicate effectively, they inspire people, they get them to move and do things, they make the people feel heard, and people they're with feel heard and understood. Some people, a small percentage, some people roll out of bed and do that, but that's what we see, those like, I mean, because financial advice, for the most part, even historically, has been about business development. You separate yourself by being the one that can develop the business, which is basically trust is the primary currency and transaction. And so, if you can communicate well and build trust, you're going to get more clients. And more clients, you get more assets. More assets, you look more successful. The thing that I always struggled with was we would look at those people and say, look at what they're doing. They're great communicators. They're building trust and rapport, and people like them and trust them. And it's like, yeah, they are for sure, no doubt. I can see that, but nobody ever really teaches you how the effective ways to build trust and connection, to get somebody to open up and talk to you as if you're their best friend that they've known for years and years and years. And so that's the thing that sort of always bothered me was we all shook our head and went, yep, definitely important. That's definitely what separates that person from the rest, no doubt. But then there's never like a playbook, it didn't seem like, on how to do it, other than they'd say, go watch that person. Like go watch LeBron James play
yeah,
basketball and then come back and you're going to be able to shoot just like LeBron James. It's like, well, I'm not sure that it works that way. So that's the part that always irked me. That's also what sort of sparked me or motivated me to go down this path, to start the podcast, to get this kind of content and education out there for advisors, was just a desire to actually, again, the answers were out there. We just need to bring them back into the world of financial advice.
well, that's awesome. Well, what's one or two tips that you can share along that line that you've picked up?
In terms of anything in particular?
Yeah, in terms of that communication, building the bond, uh, that you've seen or that
Mm.
you help advisors with at RFG.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into this, right? We could do probably a whole podcast series on what goes into building trust and connection. But one of my favorite things to talk about, because it's so easily doable in any interaction you have as an advisor, but also like in life. I call it the dynamic duo of building trust, and it's asking great questions and then listening with empathy and curiosity. And I think the other reason that I picked those two and like those two is because they're doable. You can apply it to any conversation, and also the vast majority of people are really bad at it. Like you don't meet many people that ask really great questions, then listen with like intent, curiosity, and empathy, and like want to, and they're like they're dialed into what you're saying afterwards. I mean, in fact, there's research in one of these books behind me about the fact that when they go ask people how many people do you have in your life that listen to you, and almost half of the respondents say none. And then of the other half, the answers are one and two. Like almost nobody says I have three people in my life that will truly listen to me and I feel heard and understood. And so then of course they're like, okay, who are those one or two? And then usually it's who you think it is. It's like their best friends and family members. Right? And so you sit there and you go, okay, well, if I can do that, then I don't elevate myself directly to the status of a best friend and family member, but I'm at least in that realm. I have the same level of trust and connection. So asking great questions and then listening with empathy and curiosity, it's a communication skill set that most people don't have. And then if you do it and you do it well, it accelerates trust and connection. There's I've mentioned this so many times now, but I remember reading this study back in 2017 and going, this feels important. And so now I've talked about it for this is about 8 years, right? So but I just keep pounding the drum on it because it's like, well, you probably can't hear it too much. I'm always happy to be reminded of it. But it was a study where they went and they had two groups of people, or actually they had two groups, and in each group they had two people sitting at a table across from each other. So group A, two people at a table sitting across from each other. They said, hey, have a 15-minute conversation and you can ask no more than 4 questions. Group B, two people sitting across the table from each other, 15-minute conversation. They had one rule. It was you have to ask the other person at least 9 questions. So the only difference in that 15-minute conversation were the number of questions that were going to be asked. They run these conversations thousands of times. So they recorded them, they analyzed them, they talked to the subjects of the experiment afterwards, and they came back and they said, all right, basically we found 3 things. The group that asked more questions, the person on the receiving end said that they liked the person more, they trusted the person more, and they felt more comfortable opening up and divulging personal, sensitive information about their lives. And it's like, wait a minute. That feels like a pretty valuable skill for a financial advisor to have, is the ability for the person to go, hey, I really like you, I trust you, and I want to tell you things about my life that I don't tell the majority of other people. And I remember sitting there going, hang on. They just asked more questions. In other words, I was more interested in the other person than I was in myself. And that in and of itself is a differentiator. It didn't even get into how to ask questions or the best types of questions to ask. I mean, that's how you elevate it to the next level. It just said, hey, if you just ask more questions, people are going to like you, trust you, and want to share more information with you. And it's just an example of where I go, oh, like this insight's out there. It's been out there. How do we bring it back and apply it? So that's I can go all day on all that stuff. But yeah, if you're going, hey, what's an easy way to do it? Just start asking more questions. And then when the person responds and when they answer your question, like stay tuned in, dial in, and listen not just to what they're saying, but like why are they saying it? What's the emotion behind it? And that's where you show and develop empathy and curiosity.
Yeah, I think empathy is so important. Are you familiar with Kathy Balasek?
Yeah.
Who talks
I had
about.
her on the podcast. I guess it was within the last year.
Oh, okay, fantastic. Yeah, for people watching and listening, Kathy's been on the show a couple times, and she talks a lot about the importance of building empathy, and
Yeah.
she works with advisors on talking with empathy. I mean, that's her whole focus, and it's such an important message.
Yeah, she's great, and she does a great job of it, particularly with the type of situations that she's guiding advisors through, where you've got people that are going through loss and dealing with grief. I mean, like, there's no more important need for empathy that situation, right? And like learning how to guide somebody through that. I remember when she came on my podcast and I was talking through with her, like, hey, how do we deal with these situations? What do we do wrong? Like, she was basically like, here are the things you don't want to do when talking with somebody who just lost a loved one or that's going through grief. And it was like 5 things. And I'm like, yeah, I definitely do every single one of those things. It was a really humbling, convicting moment where I was like, yeah, I don't know how to handle it. And whatever I'm doing is not how you're supposed to do it. So.
Yeah, I'm with you. I had no idea until I started, really tuning into her. But I think it's so important is because as advisors, we're going to have clients who are dealing with loss.
Yeah,
It's
right. It's
just
inevitable.
the nature of the business.
That's right.
So this is such an important thing. But I want to go back to what you were talking about because it's really become a focus for me on the show. And that is the power of asking questions it came from I've been doing this for a long time. I've worked as a consumer advocate. I've done some work with the California Department of Insurance. I've done litigation consulting. I've done a whole bunch of things. And, in thinking about fraud and scams is a lot of times it's that we have the expectation that people know what questions to ask. However, where are people going to have had the opportunity to have learned how to ask these questions? So when you're talking about asking questions, it's also helping our clients and our friends ask the right questions. So, I just love that you focus in on that. I mean, what do you think about that there's a power in asking the right question?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think that that's why I was saying that asking more questions is good, but I didn't even talk about like how to ask like great questions. So I look at it in a few different ways. One, I always say if you ask better questions, you get better answers. So if you want a better answer, you want more clarity on what you should do, just ask a better question. Or if you want to help somebody else have more clarity in terms of what they're supposed to do, or what they want to do, just ask them a better question. If you ask better questions, you get better answers. And asking great questions is an art. It's a skill, and I think we aren't taught that. And so we ask the questions that just naturally come to us without spending a whole lot of time thinking through, hey, is there a way that I could ask this that would get closer to that would help me get a better response? Or oftentimes, all the main question the main purpose that questions serve is to help us think better and more clearly, right? To help us process information better. Or, I mean, oftentimes they can be used to connect as well. There's a variety of ways that we use questions. But yeah, I mean, asking great questions is an art. And one of the most helpful, powerful things that a great question can do is it can guide the person you're talking through a thought process that unlocks or gives them clarity on something that they didn't already have, that they didn't already see. And you just frame the question a little bit differently. And by framing the question differently, you help them get a better answer. I mean, it's a truly powerful skill. Again, pretty much in all areas of life, but certainly as well with when you're working with clients. So it's like instead of asking somebody, "Hey, what are your goals?" Like that's not a bad question. It's just not a good question. I mean, let's not let's not beat around the bush, I guess. It's a lazy question. So like, what's a better question? It's like, okay, so imagine you woke up tomorrow and somebody gave you $1 million and you had to spend it by the end of the year. What would you spend it on? What would you do with it? Right? And they're like, well, I'd probably put as much away as I'd probably put as much away in a retirement account as I could. Oh, really? Why would you do that? And I mean, back to the art of asking questions. If you don't want to ask why, but I'm just going to go for the sake of the example. You go, okay, I'm curious. What makes you say you put it in a retirement account? Oh, well, I'm behind in my retirement account because we probably spent more money than we should have the last few years going on vacations and making memories. And so I'm a little bit behind and I definitely just don't want to work forever. Right? And so now you're getting them they're thinking more intentionally about the question, right? Instead of just giving, what are your goals? I don't know. I don't sit around thinking about my financial goals all day, every day, like you hope that I would, right? So it's just, we can go into multiple examples of that. I'll give one more. My least favorite question of all time, even though I do it and people do it, I don't judge them for it, but we can be better, is how are you? How is your day? Right? It's just a lazy question. If you ask that question, you have to be okay getting a bad response or an unsatisfying response. If you ask somebody, how was your day? You should expect their response to be good. And if you're thinking, hey, I was kind of open to get a little bit more out of that, I'd like to go a little deeper, if you don't mind, ask a better question if you want to get a better answer. And so I think a lot of times we don't recognize that the questions we ask have the power to do that.
Well, so just out of curiosity, what do you ask people when you see them?
Yeah, so let's take family dinners. We get after school, we get home, we eat dinner as a family. And so instead of saying, "Hey kids, hey guys, how are your days today?" We'll go through and say, "Hey, what was the best part of your day? What was the highlight of your day? Did you struggle at any point today? What friends did you play with? What'd you do on the playground? Right? What things like that, things that are designed to be a little bit more it makes them work less to find a good answer. You don't have to work as hard. I don't sit around there, and maybe I should, by the way, but I don't sit around going thinking to myself, how am I doing right now? You know, and I probably should do more of that. So whenever somebody asks, how are you doing? I don't know what to say. And then I'm also thinking, like, do you really want to know? I mean, most people ask me that, they don't really want to know. So do I divulge if I'm not doing well? So again, here another one that I like is, instead of saying, "Hey, how was your weekend?" you say, "Hey, did you do anything fun over the weekend?" Right? Like these small changes that make big differences. Right? And the answer may still be, "No, we just took it easy, laid low." But you're asking in a way where they can go, "You know what? Yeah, we did do something fun." And it's not just how was your weekend. It's like, what'd you do that was fun? So just again, small changes, different conversations.
That's awesome. And I love the power in that because, it gets back to what we were joking around at the very beginning of the show, asking kids how their day was, and you get that answer like, good.
Right.
What
Right.
happened? Nothing.
Yeah.
And it's like, really, you went to school for 8 hours today and nothing happened? So,
Right. I mean, I don't think there's a way to just become fully bulletproof and immune to those responses from kids, especially as they get older. So by no means am I saying like, oh, if you're getting those responses, make this one change and all next thing you know, it'll be an instantly better. But if you ask better questions on a consistent basis, you're going to get some better responses, right? And I think we just tend to blame the recipient for not giving us a good answer instead of asking, is there something that we could be doing better? Is there a way that we could be making it easier to answer that question? One of my favorite pieces of feedback that I've gotten from we were doing some training for this firm up in Washington, no, Oregon. And on these communication skills and how to better get clients to open up and connect with them, especially early on in the relationship. And so we go through this this session on communication skills, and we talk about a lot of these things, how to ask questions to get better answers, and because there's ways to do it. And we get back together a week later, and we get together, and one of the people in the group was like, "Yeah, so I did the homework. I mean, I did what I was supposed to do." And we were like, "Okay, good. How'd it go? Do you have a story you want to share?" And she's like, "Yeah, but not with a client. I actually got my 19-year-old son to open up and talk to me for the first time." And like that, I remember thinking like, that's cooler than anything that she could have ever said about the client relationship, right? But she was like, "I tried this with my son, and he actually opened up and talked to me more than I'm used to." Right. So these things, again, that's why I say communication skills, they're just good communication skills are good life skills.
yeah. Well, so much of this is it does translate, but yeah, there's nothing more powerful than a good question. And the expectation, if your clients aren't asking questions, there's something wrong. Your clients should be engaged and they should be asking questions. If your clients aren't curious and they're just nodding their heads,
Yeah.
not a good sign.
Yeah. Sign of lack of engagement for sure. So you said a second ago, there's nothing more powerful than a good question, which I do believe to be 90% true. But there's also this caveat, which goes to the other part of the dynamic duo around listening. So the way I look at it or say it is that a great question without great listening is no longer a great question. So if you ask a great question and the person's
Ooh,
responding and you're not listening, you're not going to get the response that you want. So that automatically invalidates the quality of the question. Usually, there's a what we mentioned earlier, hostage negotiation, right? That's never been mentioned before. There's a FBI hostage negotiator that, by the way, talk about needing to ask good questions to get information out. You have to be really good at that when
yeah.
you're dealing with when you're dealing with criminals that don't want to tell you anything. And he said they have a rule. That's what they say, is that a good question without great listening is no longer a good question. Something along those lines. They said that from what they've seen, that it's not even just that it sort of like neutralizes the question. They think that if a good question without without listening, following up, actually undermines or takes away from the relationship. Like it's harmful to the relationship and the connection. If you ask a great question and you don't listen, it's actually a negative. It's not neutral, but it's negative.
Wow. That's pretty powerful and makes sense. So, Brendan, to wrap up, I have what's called the Get Ready Hot Take Trio. These are 3 quick questions that I ask all my guests. The first one is, what's one money myth you're trying to break?
Money myth trying to break. Oh yeah, okay. This one's easy. I think first thing came to mind that money can't buy happiness. Because there's studies out there that try to answer this question: can money buy happiness? And we saw one set of research about 15 years ago that said, yeah, but not over like $75 to $100,000 in income. Then another study came out back in 2021 ish, around that time frame, that said, nope. Turns out that money can buy happiness up to a much higher threshold, into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And you look at it and you go, okay, yeah, but that's all based on income. It's all based on how much you make. But I think that where we need to be thinking is, we're wondering, can money buy happiness? Not can you earn income and be happy, but how can you use your money to buy happiness? And so the way that I've heard it phrased that I like, that I sort of stole, is if your money isn't buying happiness, you're just not spending it right. Because there are evidence-based, science-backed ways that are proven that if you use your money in those ways, they boost happiness, meaning, and fulfillment in your life. And so so this myth of money can't buy happiness is not true. Is there a income level in which you're happier? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. We've seen, like, those are the studies I mentioned earlier, but no one's actually sat down and gone, I mean, well, they have, but we've overlooked it. When we say can money buy happiness, it's not, can we earn our way to it? It's, can we use our money in ways that make us happier? And the answer to that is unequivocally yes.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah, I mean, it is nice to have a little bit of money. So,
Yeah,
but it's all relative. And for
that's
some
right.
people, a certain amount of money is enough to live a very full and satisfied life. So, next question is, we'll get out the time machine for a minute. If you could go back in time, knowing what you know now about money, what is one thing you tell your younger self?
I think I would want to make sure that I learned earlier that money is just a tool that funds the things that are important to you in life. And just like it's just like time and energy and attention, it's a resource and it's a tool that you get to use to fund the things that are most important in your life. And that's it. Nothing more, nothing less, right? Money's purpose is to make sure that you're living a fulfilled life aligned with the things that are important to you. Just like how you spend your time, your energy, and your attention, money's just another one of those resources.
That's awesome. Love it. And that's definitely a popular answer on the show. And I am completely with that answer. So, to wrap up, what is your number one tip for changing how we think about money?
I think I would say we need to reframe spending as investing where appropriate, when it's appropriate. So, going out and I'll use an example of, I don't like to look at it as, hey, I'm spending money to work out. I'm investing in my future health. I don't like to look at it and say, I'm spending money on coaching or training. I'm investing in my future knowledge, career, and development. Now, are there ways that where you spend and don't invest? Certainly, no doubt. Don't get me wrong, but I think if we can start, like, instead of shaming ourselves around spending, when you have something that's important to you that we know is a factor in living a good life, like health or social relationships or pursuing passions and creating memories, right? Like, we need to stop shaming the idea of we're wasting money in spending and instead say, what am I investing in? Am I investing in my future self in some way?
That's awesome. I love that. And I even think about, things like buying a cup of coffee, the popular advice, don't buy your daily cup of coffee. Well, maybe you're investing in your joy.
Yeah,
If
yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah.
what makes you happy, it's
That's
like,
right. Yeah, right. That's exactly right. Assuming that you're not piling up mountains of credit card debt to enjoy your coffee, then then you should enjoy it because that's something that you enjoy during the day, right? There's a guy named Ramit Sethi who he wrote a book called "I
Yeah.
Will Teach You to Be Rich." Terrible name, great, but great insights. And he said something a long time ago that sticks with me to this day. He said, um, "Spend extravagantly on the things that you love, and cut mercilessly on the things that you don't." Which I just think is great spending advice, right? It's just like, hey, don't worry about if you love your cup of coffee and it's like the best part of your day. Spend on it. Don't feel guilty, but go find the thing that's not as important to you, and then cut mercilessly in those areas.
Yeah, that's awesome advice, and I love it. And he lives by that philosophy. Of
Yeah,
course, he has a little bit of money to spend now because he's been successful. But I mean,
sure.
it's a great rule. So, Brendan, where can people learn more about you, and where can they tune into the Human Side of Money podcast?
Yeah, so the podcast is the place where most of my thoughts and knowledge and insights and questions are out there around the human side. So it's called The Human Side of Money. You can get it. You can find if you listen to podcasts, you can go find it anywhere. And then I also hang out and interact and talk and put stuff out on LinkedIn quite a bit as well. So either one of those places. And then I also have I write an article and record some videos around the human side that are on the RFG Advisory website. So it's all kind of all three: podcast, look up on your podcast player, LinkedIn. There's always stuff on there most days, and then a video series that's designed to be client facing, and then articles on applying the human side for advisors. Those are on the RFG Advisory website.
Fantastic. And for people watching and listening, if you have access to the show notes, there will be links to all of those things in the show notes. Brendan, thanks for coming on the podcast today. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to it, and I just love the idea of changing the way we think about money.
Fantastic. And thank you, everyone, as always, for tuning in to this episode of Before Life Happens. If this episode helped you change the way you think about money, please be sure to subscribe and to tell a friend. You can also go to my website at tonystewart.com to get email updates and join the Get Ready movement. Until next time, let's change the way we think about money.